Greetings, Professor. This is Safiya Saleh from Morocco, DTN 5 2027 to 13 batch. So in this presentation, I will present the good governance audit and report of World Taekwondo, which shows a strong practical commitment to development, integrity, and athlete welfare, but lacks formal written policies across key social responsibility areas. The World Taekwondo Federation was founded in 1973. It's a non-profit international sport federation, and it is the governing body of Taekwondo worldwide. The World Taekwondo Federation is the highest authority in Taekwondo sport governance pyramid. Taekwondo was officially an Olympic sport in 2008. 2023, 2024, World Taekwondo scored 82 and ranked 12 out of 32 international federations. So about the organizational chart, the World Taekwondo has a president on top of the federation, which oversees and has the ultimate power on the federation. He's followed by the Secretary General, who has the second more, let's say, power inside the federation and oversees all the departments from the president's office, GMS office, the Lausanne office, Seoul HQ, and Global Integrity EU. So for sure, the World Taekwondo has its HQ in Seoul and has another office, annex office in Lausanne, Switzerland. So the World Taekwondo Council member has 24 members. 29% of them are women and 75% of them are men, which shows a gap here in women representation in leadership positions in the World Taekwondo board. 20% of the council members are Korean and 41% of them are Asian, which also shows a representation gap of other continents and countries. The assessment tool used for this here is the Sport Governance Observer, which is developed by the Play the Game and internationally recognized as one of the most rigorous tools for evaluating governance in sport organizations. The SGO framework is based on four governance dimensions: transparency, democracy, internal accountability, and social responsibility. Each dimension includes specific indicators, yes, no, and not applicable scoring system. The strength and weaknesses of this model that we have recognized during this analysis, that it has a strong standardization, high objectivity through binary scoring, and strong focus on formal governance structures. However, it has a strong focus on formal structure rather than real practices, and a heavy emphasis on publication. So if an organization has good internal procedures but does not publish them, it's for them. For collecting data, we have used primary documents and web-based data collection. For the coding system, yes, required a clear documentary evidence and public accessibility. And no was used when evidence was missing, incomplete, or not public, and processes were not described in the status in the constitution, and there was like no written policy. The governance assessment of World Taekwondo reveals a mixed performance across the four dimensions of Sport Governance Observer Framework. While World Taekwondo demonstrates relatively strong formal structures and transparency by 67%, and the special important weaknesses remain in democracy, accountability, and especially social responsibility. So these variations reflect an organization that is administratively functional and communicative, yet still evolving in terms of inclusive decision making, oversight, and ethical safeguards and modern social governance expectations. Moving on to the consequences of good and bad governance practices, we start by transparency. So the World Taekwondo publishes the status bylaws and competition rules, which strengthens the institutional credibility of the federation and demonstrates its openness. It publishes also development funded data and scholarships. It helps people, the Taekwondo community, to know what's going on in terms of development funds and where those funds are allocated, and also helps the federations understand what funds exist and how they are distributed. Publication of board members of their mandate, starts and end dates, and basic profiles. So now the community also will can know who represents them, and there would be like easier engagement, and it strengthens the democratic culture in Taekwondo as well. However, there is no published multi-annual strategy policy plan, which hinders the long-term planning and reduces credibility with IOC and ISOF and weakens the functional proposals. There is no annual policy plan published and no budget linking to strategic objectives. It weakens the financial governance and complicates external auditing and also reduces the confidence for institutional partners, the sponsor, for example, the IOC grants. There is no published reports on corruption risks or conflicts of interest, and there is limited publication of safeguarding ethics and disciplinary case summaries, which actually at the last World Taekwondo Cadet Championships, we have seen two cases of two coaches violating or abusing their young athletes, like they're basically children. In a broadcast live on the media, and we haven't seen the World Taekwondo do any action directly to these coaches. Yes, there is a hotline. Yes, there is a place to report, but I don't think that kids will be able to report through those hotlines. Now, moving on to democracy. So there is a General Assembly that includes direct representation of all member national associations, and also the elections use secret ballots. Athletes represented through the Athlete Commission and an Election Athletes Commission member on the council. The Continental Union unions also hold a structured voting power and representation. However, there is no open recruitment processes for council candidates, which reduces the renewal and weaker the leadership quality, and also enhances the perception of close politics going on inside of the organization, and also shows that instead of focusing on the skill, we're focusing on the representation and whether those people actually are in the Taekwondo circle. There is no nomination committee with independence criteria. The committee is actually formed by the president, and there is a risk here of politicization and reduced credibility of election integrity. There's also the multi-annual plan policy plan is absent, so the General Assembly cannot vote on long-term democratic governance directions. There is a limited involvement of referees, coaches, and volunteers in democratic procedures, which actually shows that what Taekwondo misses experts' input, and this weaker actually the decision quality, which we actually see in most of the rules and regulations of World Taekwondo that do not take into account the athletes and the referees and coaches who are directly impacted by those. About internal accountability, the General Assembly approves budgets, financial reports, and elects auditors. There is an independent auditor appointed by the General Assembly, and there are ethics committee and integrity mechanisms inside of the World Taekwondo that protects the organization from scandals and build a culture of ethical responsibility. There's defined roles of standing committees at the status Constitution Article 14. About the bad governance examples, there is no obligation for management to report to the council at least 4 times per year, which creates a gap of supervision and possible misalignment between the council and the management. There's also no clear resignation procedures for misconduct, conflicts of interest, and absenteeism. And there is a risk here of keeping inactive and unethical board members. There's no structured tender processes of financial thresholds, statutes, and regulations. Like, for instance, for financial documents, there has to be at least 2 people signing those documents, but most of the time it's the Secretary General alone taking the liberty to sign those documents, which opens the gap here in financial vulnerabilities and also misuse of funds. Lastly, the societal responsibility. There are development programs and the solidarity funds, which gives more opportunities for developing countries, better access to equipment, training, events, and reduces global inequalities. Scholarships and leadership programs for women that expands pathways for girls and women in Taekwondo and increases representation and leadership diversity. There is also an open and integrity hotline for doping, harassment, manipulation, and ethical misconduct that makes athletes and referees and coaches feel safer and more protected, and it reduces the fear of reporting abuse. There is a support for the Taekwondo Humanitarian Foundation, which provides sport, hope, structure to displaced youth, and positive societal impact. Finally, about the bad governance, so there is no formal written policies on social inclusion, gender equality, and environmental sustainability. So there is a weak evaluating system here and inconsistent policy implementations. So there are initiatives, but they're not formally written into policies inside the constitution for Taekwondo. There's no documented procedures for processing the complaints about discrimination, harassment, or social misconduct. So the victims may not feel protected, or there is an inconsistency in terms of handling sensitive cases. There's no structured dual career policies for athletes. So now athletes welfare, there is a risk here, and there is a reduced athlete retention as a result. And also athletes feel there is a big struggle balancing between their sports and their education, and it is actually more emphasized in the disadvantaged athletes from poorer federations and associations. About the recommendations for transparency, we recommend to create a digital governance library where Taekwondo would put all the relevant documentation. Uh, some documents may not exist yet, so there would be some struggles to harmonize the old and the new rules, especially that World Taekwondo keeps always changing the rules. So this could be one of the barriers to implement the strategy. And also recommend a transparency dashboard, which is a public dashboard showing progress on governance reforms. So the problem here would be the fear of exposing weaknesses and requires a quarterly update. So there has to be someone taken in charge of this. There would be a risk of reputational pressures and if progress is slow in terms of the World Taekwondo. The third one is the World Taekwondo Open Data Hub, which is a public access to database about funding, about results, gender statistics, also all the statistics available that can help in research, that can help in thesis and research and development of the academic side of Taekwondo as well, but also gives people a clear understanding of what's going on in terms of the Taekwondo. Second one is democracy. So we recommend to create a structured public forum where all the candidates for president, VP, and council will answer, like present their manifestos and answer moderated questions. This is used actually by World Athletics. So it enhances the integrity of World Taekwondo and also gives the federations to the national federations to gain equal access to candidate visions, more or less resources to get the same information as large federations, athletes see leadership transparency. So the problem here would be the political resistance from the incumbents, fear of public confrontation, and cultural preferences for consensus-driven processes, especially in Asian cultures. There is also the second one would be global consultation platform for the federations. Would be a digital platform where the federations can submit governance proposals and comment on other proposals as well. The barrier would be here is the uneven digital literacy. The third one is the strengthened athlete, coach, and referee representation, but the resistance would be from the council members because there would be a kind of a recalibration, internal political recalibration, and which means if we give a certain group more power, then we're taking power from another group. So this would be the challenge here, is to make the power more socially perceived than personally perceived. About the internal accountability, there should be a mandatory annual board self-assessment with external oversight. It requires the World Taekwondo Council to complete a structured yearly self-evaluation, and it would be supervised by external governance experts. So here the resistance would be from long-standing leadership, and also it requires like more time and more resources. The internal performance KPIs for committees. So establish a performance indicators for each committee, and this would be barrier here would be the lack of experience and with KPI frameworks, and also the cultural shift from informal to formal results-based governance, results-based governance. The third recommendation is a board attendance and participation report to publish annual attendance rates, voting participation, and committee attendance for all council members. So the barrier here would be possible political sensitivity and the risk of embarrassment for performance, for instance. It would be like the huge resistance from the council. Last but not least, the societal responsibility. So the first recommendation is World Taekwondo Social Impact Lab, which is a global platform showcasing, supporting, and funding Taekwondo-based social projects, refugees, gender empowerment, anti-bullying, disability inclusion, and so on. It includes micro grants, mentoring, annual awards, and a public map of ongoing projects. So here the barrier would be the need for dedicated budget and varying capacities of each member national federation or association to design a social project, and also their ability to monitor evaluation tools, and also communicate the data and how they are allocating those funds. Um, Lastly, is the World Taekwondo Safeguarding Passport, which is a global certification, which would be mandatory online certification for all coaches and all stakeholders involved in the sport of Taekwondo. Um, it strengthens actually the integrity of our taekwondo and ensures that athletes are safe at all levels, prevents abuse, misconduct, and increases the trust from parents, governments, and also the athletes and sponsors as well. So the only barrier here would be the high complexity for translating into multiple languages and the compliance of and compliance enforcement in terms of the resistance that would we would see from older coaches that still have the older mentality of the toughness and not taking into account all the pedagogy and the safeguarding tools. Lastly, so in conclusion, this governance assessment reveals that World Taekwondo stands at a pivotal moment in its institutional evolution, and the federation displays a meaningful strength, such as transparent financial reporting, inclusive general assembly, representation, athlete participation mechanisms, and substantial investment in global development programs, which reflects actually a general commitment to serving its worldwide sport community. However, the analysis also identifies structural weaknesses across democracy, internal accountability, and especially the societal responsibility, driven largely by an absence of formalized policies, procedures, and long-term strategic documents. So these gaps limit the World Taekwondo's ability to consistently uphold the principles of good governance and to fully align with the international standards set by the IOC, ICWF, and also the sport governance observer model. So overall, the organization demonstrates the ambition and foundational mechanisms required for robust governance, but improvements depend on greater formalization, transparent decision making, and deeper stakeholder inclusion by translating its strong practical initiatives into clear written policies and establishing systematic procedures and integrating transparent participatory governance structures. So the World Taekwondo can actually consolidate its global leadership position and enhance the trust, credibility, and long-term sustainability. The recommendations proposed throughout this report offer actually a pragmatic and feasible pathways to achieving these goals, ensuring that World Taekwondo evolves into a model federation that reflects excellence not only um, by the mat, but also in its governance culture, uh, which is one of the vision missions of the World Taekwondo. So thank you for your attention.